It's fun. So much fun. Writing a book, not fun, but this is fun. Well, I want to start with thank you. So I wanted to really express my gratitude for all of you for schlepping out of your homes and towns and traveling and doing all it took to show up and be here. I want to really thank my daughters and my partner Josh for their blessing and doing this book and everything in my life. Just all their patience they brought and all their permission they brought and all their graciousness and a lot of humor. When things were so not funny, they found something funny. So I am forever grateful for you all for that. I want to thank Julie McCann, who is my dear friend and who is an author and an editor and artist. And Julie was really the first person I went to after getting permission from my family to do this. And I knew I was going to need Julie for a number of reasons. I can't write at all. I'm not being self-deprecating. That is not hyperbole. Like, I cannot write. So I knew I was going to need somebody who could write, and I also knew I was going to need somebody who kind of just given my declining cognitive capacity and onset of menopause was going to be able to help finish my sentences. And Julie is excellent at being able to start a sentence, and then Julie just knows what I'm saying, and that was kind of the entire process of the book. Was I'd start with 2 words, I'd be like, you know what I mean, and she'd be like, no babe, nobody knows what you mean actually, but here's what I imagine you might mean, so how about we finish the sentence this way. So Julie was, I mean, sometimes you think of an editor and you think of commas and semicolons and quotation marks and all of that, and while Julie did that and has an unbelievable eye for all of those things and all of the minutia, she really did like the entirety of the heavy lifting of my internal madness and helping turn that into, you know, anything of value you see on these pages and anything that makes sense and isn't rambling, that is Julie McCann. So I want to really express my tremendous gratitude to Julie. I had the opportunity of getting to see her dad a few days ago when we were celebrating her daughter's graduation, and I was congratulating him on his granddaughter's graduation, and he said, I want to congratulate you on the book. I said, oh, thanks. And I said, you know, that's all Julie. And he said, well, you know, Julie didn't write the book. And then I could pause and touch his elbow, and I said, actually, Julie did write the book. I want to thank Connie Burke so much, who you just were introduced to up here, for those of you who don't know her. Connie has been a friend of mine for decades, and Connie and I first really bonded when I had the privilege of being hired by her at the Northwest Network of Gay, Lesbian, Bi, and Trans Survivors of Abuse, when we were both working there, and I was realizing how much I was slipping in my ability to do the work sustainably, and I realized I really needed some help, and I needed to work in a place that was going to be able to support a sustainable work ethic. And so we were talking about that, and I was making my request for how I felt like I could do frontline advocacy work, and I kind of laid out my whole plan of what my request was to be able to work there. And Connie looked at me, never ceased making eye contact, and there was a very long pause, and then she said, I had something in mind more in the shape of a muffin. So we just stood there looking, and I had all my requests, and she had a muffin in her vision, and we've worked together for over 20 years. Connie was invaluable in this book. She was my co-author in Trauma Stewardship. She was invaluable in this book, and that Connie has a level of intelligence that I have never had, and I never will have, and she has an intellectual gear, a number of intellectual gears that I just don't have at all. And so Connie also, when we would send her something, and she was the person who really brought a tremendous critical analysis to everything, and she helped it go much, much deeper than I don't have the capacity to go to many of the places that Connie's able to go. So I'm so grateful to her and for all of her mentoring always. I do want to thank, nobody is able to be here from the publisher, but I do want to thank the publisher. Part of the reason the book came to be is because Jeevan, who works at Barrett Kohler, every year would circle back to me and be like, hey, how about we do a second book? And I would say, how about we never, ever never do another book. And he'd be like, I think we should. And I'd be like, I don't think we should. And then he'd send me like 3 more emails, and then I would just walk around the house and take photos of like the dirty dishes in my sink, and then I would take photos of the laundry that wasn't folded, and then I would take dishes of like the dog hair on my floor, and I'd be like, it's not happening. The second book is never happening. And finally it happened. So I do want to thank him for his perseverance. I want to thank my dear friend and colleague Robin Brule and her partner Lonnie, who flew in from New Mexico, so if anyone wants to give them a warm embrace afterwards. And they came here from New Mexico, and Robin is a mentor of mine, and she is an inspiration to me. She's a survivor of gun violence over the last couple years, and there's just, there's no words to describe her meaning in my life, and so I wanted to welcome you to Seattle, and people will come love up on you after. Jay Ward is somebody who couldn't be here. He is also a dear friend of mine. You'll hear about him later in some of the reading, and some of you know his brother Adam. You might remember when his brother was murdered on live television a couple years ago. He was a cameraman, and he and the newscaster were killed on live television. They were out of Virginia. And so Adam was Jay's younger brother. And Jay is living in Geneva. Good idea, right? So he's living in Geneva and just taking some time and doing tremendous international work over there. But I want to just thank him even though he can't be here with us. I also want to really thank everyone who allowed me to share their stories, everyone who was so generous in opening up and being willing to have conversations with me and be interviewed by me. I really am grateful for all of those people. I want to particularly give a shout out to all the young people in the room and my daughters and their friends and other adolescents who I interviewed and did a focus group with and asked all sorts of stuff. So if any of you who were in my focus groups or who I chatted up want to stand up in the young person realm so we can honor you guys, stand up. Any of the young people? Important to myself and Julie was that this book, while it is true that adolescents might find this book the most boring thing ever, we did want to do the best we could to make the book as accessible as possible to folks from their very early adolescence through adulthood. And so these young folks allowed me to talk to them in focus groups and talk with them one-on-one and use their stories, so I so appreciate that. I wanted to appreciate both Judge Burns, who is a judge here in Seattle, and Faisal, and some of the other folks who blessed me with what is on the back of the cover. And then I wanted to appreciate Chris Jordan, who many of you know Chris Jordan. He's an artist and he's a photographer. You would also know him for his devastating photos he takes of, for example, the albatross, when he does opens up the albatross and shows you what's in their stomach and all the plastic consumption. And he is not able to be here because he's in the midst of testifying at the UN. But he blessed us with this photo on the cover, which is from the Maldives. And so I wanted to thank them, and I wanted to thank him. Another part of the process was I tried to get the manuscript into as many people's hands as possible who I thought might hate it, who I thought might just feel nauseated reading it, who I thought would want nothing to do with it, so that they could critique it as harshly as possible. So one of those people was my friend Meg Hill, who is here and has done a tremendous, she's interning with the Institute this summer, and she's at Berkeley, she's incredibly smart, she's a hip, cool young person, she's awesome, and I thought, if this would be interesting to her, that the book might have some merit. And then Phil McCune is another friend and colleague of mine, and he's a dreamy attorney in town. If you ever need an attorney, he's a dream. And I got into his hands and a bunch of other people's hands, nationally and internationally, and I really appreciate them. All of these folks gave very, very critical feedback, which is exactly what we really wanted. Mike and Ashley are not able to be here. Mike and Ashley, those of you who are fans of Pearl Jam, Mike McCready and Ashley O'Connor, I wanted to thank them. They, for years, have helped make sure that none of the work I do, including either of the books, that finances are not a barrier. So for all the institutes we do, and for anybody who needs the book slid down or donated, or when a disaster happens and we ship large quantities of books places, Mike and Ashley have always made sure that finances were not a barrier. So I wanted to really thank them so much. And then I wanted to just give a thanks, even though they're not here either, but to all the New Yorker cartoonists. I feel like I 100% would not be able to do the work I do without these New Yorker cartoons. And that's in the work I do when I'm in communities, and it's also in this book. I didn't want to do, I just thought a book without those cartoons would be miserable. So both times they gave me permission to have the cartoons in, and I wanted to particularly thank Robert Mankoff, who many of you know is one of the New Yorker cartoonists. So he was great, and he wrote back, and I was like, I'm a trauma worker, here's what I'm doing, and he wrote back, he's like, well, there's no way you can afford this cartoon, so just, here it is. So he was fabulous. And then I wanted to really thank my colleagues, Tony and Renee and Nate, and the volunteers who came and helped set all this up. I also would not be able to do the work I do at the Institute without them, so so many thanks to